My name is Lorna Mae Gracelyn. I'm 84 years old, and I've lived in the same small clapboard house in Elkhart, Indiana, for nearly 6 decades. The siding is peeling, and the hydrangeas don't bloom like they used to, but it's mine. My memories live here, in the creaking floorboards, the chipped teacups, the soft indent of my late husband's recliner. I never thought I'd be afraid in my own home. It started with a can of green beans. That might sound silly to some folks. Just a can. But when you've been cooking and feeding a family your entire life, you know what to expect from food. You know how a can should feel in your hand. You can tell by the slightest dent, by the sound it makes when you shake it. And that day, as I turned the label over, the date screamed at me. Best by May 2019. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening in the comments. It was November of 2024. I held it up, squinting at the faded label, trying to steady my shaking fingers. 4 years expired. I set it on the table, right next to the dented can of chicken noodle soup and the dusty box of powdered potatoes. That's when I knew something wasn't right. My daughter-in-law, Meryl, had started delivering my groceries about 6 months earlier. She said it was to help out after I had that bad fall on the porch. Broke my hip in 2 places. Since then I hadn't driven. My son, Nolan, worked long hours managing a warehouse in South Bend, so Meryl took over checking in on me. That's what she called it, checking in. But Meryl never really checked in. She rushed in and out like a whirlwind, dumping groceries on the counter, talking on her Bluetooth, barely looking at me. And lately the groceries had changed. First it was the off-brand soup. Then boxed mac and cheese with no real cheese. And now, expired food. Like I wouldn't notice. Like I was just some forgetful old woman waiting to die. I looked around my kitchen. The sunlight slanted across the linoleum floor, catching the dust floating in the air like tiny ghosts. My cabinets, once full of lovingly labeled jars and neatly stacked goods, now held the same 4 or 5 sad cans. My fridge hummed softly, half empty. I picked up the expired can again, held it close to my chest and whispered, "Why, Meryl?" She used to be sweet. At least that's what I wanted to believe. When Nolan married her, she was bubbly and sharp, with those bright red nails and loud laughter. But over the years, something in her eyes grew colder. She started calling me sweetie in that condescending tone, like I was one of her toddlers, not the woman who raised the man she married. I tried to tell Nolan once. Just once. He was rushing to get off the phone for a meeting. "She's not feeding me right," I had said, voice small. "Mom, come on," he sighed. "Meryl's doing the best she can. You know how hard she works." Hard at what? At slipping my pension check into her wallet. 'Cause that was the next thing I noticed. The deposits weren't showing up like they used to. Every month my check from the state came on the 3rd. And every month, for the past 3 years, I'd written my bills with the neatness of a schoolteacher. I had logs going back decades. But in September, the amount in my checking account was $50 short. In October, $100. By November it was nearly $300 gone. I hadn't spent it. I hadn't bought a single thing except shampoo and toothpaste. And I could barely afford that now. I sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by bills, half-empty cans, and the gnawing ache of betrayal in my chest. It wasn't just the food or the money. It was the mail too. Some weeks, I'd go days without seeing a single envelope. No catalogs. No flyers. No letters. No bills. But I'd call the companies, and they'd say they mailed them. That's when I started looking closer. Meryl came in the side door every Tuesday morning around 10:30, with a reusable grocery bag. She always glanced at the mail slot by the front door, her eyes darting, her lips tightening just for a second. I started waking up early and waiting. I'd peek through the curtain to watch the mail truck pull up, then pretend to nap when she walked in. Sure enough, she'd go straight to the front door first, take the mail, stuff some of it in her purse, and leave the rest on the kitchen table. She thought I was too slow, too broken to notice. But I noticed everything. I stopped taking my pain pills. I needed my mind clear. Then I bought a voice recorder. One of those tiny ones from a discount shop in town. It fit perfectly inside the flower vase on the kitchen table. I recorded every conversation we had for 2 months. And then came the phone call. "Hi, Nolan," I said sweetly, forcing the tremble in my voice. "Hey, Mom, everything okay?" "Not really," I said. "There's something I need you to hear." I emailed the audio file that night. Meryl's voice clear as day saying, "She's not eating. I think she's getting confused. Honestly, it's probably time to think about full-time care. Her pension's being used up anyway. She'd been pocketing my money, lying to my son, trying to put me away. And the worst part, Nolan didn't call back that night. He didn't call the next day either. When the doorbell rang on Friday morning, I didn't expect it. I shuffled to the door, opened it, and there he was. Nolan. Eyes red. Shoulders slumped. He stepped inside, clutching a crumpled tissue in his hand. "Mom," he whispered. "I didn't know. I swear I didn't know." I looked at him, really looked, and for the first time in years I saw the little boy I used to rock to sleep. But before I could speak, another car pulled into the driveway. Meryl. Getting out fast. Face tight. Sunglasses on. She was about to walk into a storm she didn't see coming. And I was finally ready. To all my viewers, wasn't that a chilling start? If you felt the pain, the betrayal, and the quiet rage of Lorna Mae Gracelyn's story, drop a comment below. What would you do if someone stole from your grandma? It wasn't technology that saved me. It was ink. And memory. I kept everything in a thick blue spiral notebook, the kind with the metal coils that snag your sweaters and pages that curl at the corners over time. Every check I wrote, every deposit, every time Meryl told me she'd paid a bill or picked up my prescriptions, I logged it. Not because I didn't trust her at first, but because it gave me something to hold on to. Something real when the world started treating me like I was made of fog. I never imagined it would become evidence. The day Nolan came over was the first time he'd stepped foot in the house in nearly 4 months. He looked older, tired around the eyes, stiff in the shoulders. The weight of his silence hung between us like a wall. I didn't say a word. I just handed him the notebook. He blinked, flipping the cover open. Page after page of neat cursive. Mounts. He frowned. "What is this?" I slid a manila envelope across the table. Inside were the bank statements I'd managed to request by phone, the duplicate receipts I'd hidden in a hollow book on the shelf, and 2 envelopes I'd found tucked behind the furnace in the basement. Bills marked "past due," stuffed there by Meryl. "She said I was too forgetful to handle money anymore," I said calmly. "Said she'd take care of the bills. That I should focus on resting." But the lights kept flickering and the phone got cut off twice. And then I found the gas bill, unopened. He looked stunned. "Mom," she said. I know what she said, I whispered. But I also know what's real. He ran a hand through his hair, eyes scanning the papers. He paused at one receipt in particular. Wait, this is for the roof repair. I thought I paid for that. No, you wired Meryl the money, I said. She never hired anyone. Just patched it with plastic sheeting. I found the invoice in the trash. Nolan sat down hard. His face paled as the lies unraveled. And then we heard it. The front door. Meryl's voice drifted through the hallway. Lorna, I brought you more stew. The organic kind this time. She stopped in her tracks when she saw Nolan at the kitchen table, surrounded by papers and bills and a spiral notebook full of truth. Her smile froze. Oh, hi honey. Didn't know you were coming by. Nolan didn't look up. He picked up the envelope. Want to explain this? Meryl's eyes darted. That's old paperwork. Mom's been mixing things up lately. She thought I was stealing from her last week. I didn't think, I cut in. I knew. You wrote checks to yourself. You cashed them at the corner liquor store. I called. Meryl laughed too loudly. Lorna, please. You don't even remember what day it is half the time. That's the last time you insult my mother's mind, Nolan said sharply, rising to his feet. Meryl's face went red. You're taking her side now. After everything I've done. I cooked, I cleaned. You covered her bills with expired pantry food and pocketed her pension, Nolan snapped. You treated her like she was disposable. She threw her arms up. Fine. Believe whatever you want. I will, he said coldly. Because I have proof. And I'm filing a report. For the first time, Meryl's mask cracked. Not into sadness or guilt, but fear. You'd ruin your own wife's life over this. No, he said. You did that yourself. She stormed out, slamming the door behind her so hard the china cabinet rattled. Silence fell. Nolan turned to me. His eyes were full, wet at the corners. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Because I was afraid you wouldn't believe me, I said honestly. And he didn't deny it. He sat beside me and flipped through the pages of my notebook. As he turned each sheet, I saw something I hadn't in years. Not pity, not guilt, but respect. This isn't just ink, he whispered. It's everything we ignored. I reached for his hand. No more ignoring, I said. But I knew it wasn't over. Meryl wouldn't go quietly. And I had the bruises on my dignity to prove how far she'd go to protect her secrets. But I also had something she never counted on. A lifetime of strength. And this time someone standing beside me. If you felt that moment in your gut, the silence, the truth, the notebook full of pain, drop a comment below. What would you do if your own child didn't believe you? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell. I thought it would end there. Nolan had seen the truth with his own eyes. He'd taken the documents home, promised to speak to a lawyer, even kissed my forehead like he used to when he was little. I thought I'd finally been heard. But Meryl wasn't the type to fold and walk away. She was the kind of woman who smiled at funerals, who sent thank you cards laced with poison, who played the long game without blinking. And now, backed into a corner, she wasn't going to beg for forgiveness. She was going to burn the house down, figuratively if not literally. 3 days after she stormed out, A woman from Adult Protective Services showed up at my front door. She had a clipboard, a tight bun, and the kind of look that said, "I'm already judging you." "Mrs. Weatherby?" she asked. "Lorna Weatherby, yes. I'm Linda Fay with APS. We received a complaint about potential self-neglect. May I come in?" My stomach turned cold. Meryl. She'd reported me as unfit. "I'd prefer if my son were here," I said calmly. She pursed her lips. "You're allowed to decline, of course. But if the claim involves possible cognitive decline or health risk, we're required to follow up." She stepped inside anyway, her eyes scanning the living room. The neat cushions, the clean floor, the faint smell of cinnamon from the apple pie I'd baked that morning. She didn't say anything as she scribbled on her clipboard. "I still cook for myself," I offered. "And I've had the same GP for 30 years. You're welcome to call him." She gave a tight smile. "We will." Then she asked me to list the current president, the day of the week, and count backwards from 100 by sevens. I did it all flawlessly. I even added, "And your mascara is smudged," just to see if she'd notice I wasn't just sharp, I was insulted. She left 10 minutes later, but not before giving me a pamphlet titled, "Resources for Elderly Adults Living Alone." I sat down in my chair and stared at the front door. She was trying to trap me, frame me, get me institutionalized. And if I wasn't careful, she'd win. But she forgot. I had already lost too much to let that happen. The next morning, Nolan called. "She's lawyering up," he said. "Claiming everything in your house is hers. She told her attorney she's been supporting you financially and emotionally for years." I nearly laughed. "Emotionally? I know. No. But she's twisting it, painting herself as the saint and you as the confused, dependent mother who turned on her." Pause. "Do you believe her?" He went quiet. "Too long." "Nolan." "No," he said finally. "I believe you. But you need to help me prove it." I leaned back and stared at the ceiling. The old fan turned slowly, slicing the air like a ticking clock. "Then let me show you something she doesn't know I kept," I said. Because truth be told, I'd been saving more than just bills. Over the months, I'd tucked away every note she'd left me. Post-its with passive-aggressive instructions like "Don't touch the stove," "You'll burn down the house," or "Remember to shower, it's been 3 days." I'd kept the appointment slips from the doctors she canceled behind my back. And more importantly, I had the pension statement she never expected me to understand. The ones that showed automatic withdrawals being made to an account I never opened. But that wasn't the only secret I had left. In the attic, buried under boxes of Christmas ornaments and faded photos, sat an old locked filing cabinet that had belonged to my late husband, Boyd. Inside was the deed to the house. Not in my name, in my maiden name. A detail Meryl would have never known. Because she never bothered to ask. That meant she couldn't claim it. Not legally. Not even close. I asked Nolan to meet me that afternoon. He arrived looking like he hadn't slept in a week. When I handed him the pension records and the property deed, he stared at me with a mix of shame and awe. "You really documented everything." "No one believed me when I was young," I said. "I learned to keep receipts, in every sense." He shook his head. "We're going to win this, Mom." I believed him. But Meryl wasn't finished. Later that evening, while I was upstairs organizing the rest of my records, the front door creaked open. I knew that sound. The slightly rusted hinge on the left side made it unmistakable. I came down the stairs quietly. And there she was. In my living room. going through my drawer of mail. Meryl, I said calmly, but with steel in my voice. She froze, her hand inside the drawer like a raccoon caught in the trash. What are you doing? Yes. She blinked, then pulled out a stack of envelopes and smiled. Oh, I thought I left my insurance paperwork here last time I visited. Just checking. She was trying to steal more. Maybe the last of the documentation. Maybe something she could twist. I'd like you to leave, I said. Come on, Lorna. Don't be dramatic. You're not well. You don't get to say that anymore, I snapped. And then Nolan stepped in from the kitchen doorway. I've heard enough, he said. Meryl's face fell. Get out, Meryl, he said. We're done. She stormed past me without another word. But I knew it wasn't over. She'd been playing this game for a long time. Manipulating the narrative, twisting facts, weaponizing love. But now I had control of the story. And soon the whole family would know. Not just about the money, but about what she'd really been doing all along. If that scene gave you chills, drop a comment below. What would you do if someone used your own family against you? Make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel and click the bell. By the end of that week, Nolan had arranged for what he called a conversation, but what I knew would be nothing short of a reckoning. He invited everyone. My grandchildren, his brother Dean, even Dean's wife Valerie, who barely showed up to Thanksgiving anymore. And of course Meryl. She wouldn't miss a chance to defend her performance to an audience. The gathering was set for a Saturday afternoon at my house. Nolan said it was better to keep it in familiar territory. For me. But I knew the truth. He didn't want her rewriting the narrative again. Not in a place where she held the keys. That morning I put on my good blouse, the blue one with the lace sleeves, and took my time brushing my hair. I even wore the locket Boyd gave me on our 40th anniversary. It still had his tiny photo in it. Somehow I felt stronger with it around my neck. Nolan had printed copies of the documents. He didn't want anyone accusing me of fabrication. There were folders laid out on the coffee table. Pension withdrawals, forged authorizations, duplicate food purchases all billed to my name, and the mail, some of it unopened, hidden in a shoebox Meryl had tucked behind the dryer. I made lemon bars. Not because anyone deserved them, but because I deserved to feel like myself. By 2 p.m. they began to arrive. Dean walked in first, with Valerie trailing behind, tapping on her phone. Nolan greeted them stiffly. The air was thick before anyone said a word. Then came Meryl, wearing cream slacks, a cashmere sweater, and her Sunday pearls. She carried a bottle of sparkling cider like she was headed to brunch. Lorna, she said, smiling tightly. I brought this for the table. She set it down like nothing had happened. I didn't respond. Once everyone was seated, on my chairs in my living room beside my fireplace, Nolan stood up. I want to thank you all for coming, he began. This isn't easy, but it's necessary. Valerie looked up. Dean shifted in his seat. This is about Mom. About what's been happening these past few months. Meryl cut in. I told you already, she's been confused. We've all seen it. I've been doing everything I can to help. Nolan held up a hand. Please. Let me finish. Then he picked up the folder marked Pension Records and began to speak. He walked them through the payments, the automatic transfers to an account under Meryl's name, the cancellations of my medical appointments, the post-it notes she'd left like breadcrumbs of humiliation. Valerie blinked. Dean leaned forward. Meryl's smile twitched. I didn't steal, she said sharply. Those withdrawals were for groceries. Medicine. Things your mother needed. No, Nolan replied. They weren't. Because she never got those things. He turned to me. Mom, do you want to say anything? He nodded. I looked around at the faces of my family. Faces I had fed, held, comforted. People who once crawled across my kitchen floor in diapers, or cried in my arms during heartbreak. They all looked at me now like I was a ghost speaking her first words in decades. I trusted her, I said. Even when she started treating me like a burden. Even when she brought me dented cans of beans and said it was enough for dinner. I believed she was just tired. Overwhelmed. I swallowed hard. But the truth is, she wanted me invisible. Convenient. Like a story she could rewrite however she wanted. Dean rubbed his forehead. Valerie bit her lip. Then Meryl exploded. Don't you all see what's happening? She's not well. This is exactly what I've been talking about. She's turning this into some dramatic conspiracy. Meryl, Nolan said quietly. You came into her house, uninvited. You took her mail. You lied to all of us. And now you're lying again. No one else saw what I saw, she snapped. The forgetfulness, the paranoia, She made lemon bars this morning, Valerie whispered. Everyone turned to look at her. What? Valerie looked up. She made lemon bars. And had place settings ready for all of us. And this house is spotless. She's not confused. She's grieving. She's angry. But she's not gone. The silence that followed was heavy. And then Nolan opened the last folder. It was a printed letter, written by me. I had drafted it the night after Meryl's uninvited visit. Detailed everything. Not just the money but the emotional abuse. The silencing. The manipulation. And it ended with these words. I am not confused. I am not weak. I am not yours to manage like a broken vase on a shelf. I am Lorna Weatherby. And I remember everything. Meryl stood up. I'm not listening to this, she hissed. And she turned to leave. But Dean stood up too. Sit down, Meryl. He froze. He wasn't yelling. He didn't need to. I think we all deserve to hear the truth. Even if it makes us uncomfortable. Meryl slowly sat back down, her arms crossed. You took advantage of her kindness, Dean said. And you did it behind all our backs. Valerie finally spoke again. You manipulated the entire family. You made us believe she was slipping. You're lucky this didn't turn into criminal charges. Meryl said nothing. Because for once, there was nothing left to say. If your heart broke and then healed a little in this chapter, tell us in the comments. Have you ever been underestimated, then proved everyone wrong? Hit that like button, subscribe for more powerful stories, and turn on notifications. 2 weeks passed. The house was quiet again, but not in that lonely, forgotten kind of way. No, this silence felt clean, like a wound finally starting to scab over. Meryl hadn't returned since the family meeting. Nolan made sure of that. He came by every other day now, sometimes with groceries, sometimes just with stories from work or photos of the grandkids. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. I'd asked him not to speak to me like I was fragile. I told him that I didn't need pity. I needed presence. He said he understood. And for once I believed him. But the reckoning wasn't over. Not yet. See, I never wanted revenge. I wanted truth. I wanted the people I loved to stop letting others rewrite my story like I wasn't still here to speak for myself. And the last piece of that truth. Well, it came quietly, just like everything else in my life that mattered. That Monday morning, Nolan came over with an envelope in his hand. This came for you, he said. Registered mail. He handed it to me, hesitated, and then sat down across from me on the edge of the sofa. The envelope was thick, official-looking. I opened it slowly. Inside was a letter from a lawyer, someone Nolan had contacted behind the scenes. He had hired someone to look into all the pension withdrawals, the unauthorized access to my financial records, and Meryl's forged caregiver reimbursements. The letter stated clearly that what she had done was grounds for legal action, elder financial abuse. She hadn't just crossed a line. She danced across it in heels. They're recommending full restitution, Nolan said. And a formal no-contact order. I looked up at him. You did this. He nodded. You didn't ask me to. But I had to make it right. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just exhaled. A long, slow breath I didn't know I'd been holding since the first day Meryl moved in and started calling me sweetheart like I didn't remember my own name. I'm not going to court, I said. I don't want headlines. I don't want police. I want her gone. And I want everyone to remember that I was never confused. I was betrayed. Nolan nodded again. Done. And just like that, peace began to bloom. Few weeks later I got a letter. It wasn't from Meryl, she didn't have the nerve. It was from Valerie. It read, Dear Lorna, I don't know if you'll ever forgive me. I believed her when I should have believed you. I'm sorry I stayed silent. I'm sorry I let comfort outweigh truth. But I see you now. I see the woman who held this family together for decades. And I want to be part of whatever comes next, if you'll have me. I folded the letter and tucked it into my Bible. Not because I'd forgiven her yet, but because I was finally ready to begin. Spring came early that year. I started tending to my garden again, planted new roses along the back fence, cleared out the dead leaves from the hydrangea bed. My hands still worked, stiff as they were. My knees still ached, but they bent when they had to. Nolan built a small bench under the pear tree. He said it was for me to sit and drink my tea in the afternoons. I knew it was also a way to keep his guilt from swallowing him whole. But that was okay. We all carry our mistakes in different ways. The family came over for Mother's Day. The grandkids brought hand-drawn cards. Ellie, who had barely looked me in the eye in months, helped set the table. No one mentioned Meryl. Not once. That was its own kind of justice. As the sun began to set that evening, Nolan pulled me aside. There's something I need to say. Waited. I should have known, he whispered. I should have seen it. You were never confused. You were hurt. And I let it happen. I looked up at him, my son grown and gray at the temples. You didn't let it happen, Nolan, I said. You trusted the wrong person. That's human. But now, we're here. You see me. That's what matters. He nodded, eyes glassy. I see you, Mom. I do. And I believed him. I didn't need to punish Meryl to feel free. I didn't need to scream or shame or destroy. I just needed to be heard. Because the strongest revenge is being visible again. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't just someone's mother or burden or chore. I was Lorna Weatherby again. Whole, unbroken, and very much alive. If this story moved you, if you've ever been underestimated, overlooked, or betrayed, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, and subscribe for more powerful stories like Lorna's. Because the truth doesn't erase us, sharpens us, and it's time the world remembered that.